Hi.
All right.
Hey, everybody, we're live with our friend Derrick Sue's running for mayor of Oakland for the 2022 mayor's race. And Derrick, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you, Zenny?
I am outstanding. Hanging in there.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. Loud and clear. Can you hear me?
All
Can,
right, great.
you can hear
Yes,
me?
I hear you just fine.
Outstanding. Yeah. Hey, so without any further ado, how is the situation for the homeless in Oakland at this moment on this day that COVID-19 vaccinations are starting to be distributed around the country and around the world?
Well, one of the good things about being unhoused here in Oakland is that the infection rate for COVID is under 2% in the homeless encampments, which is incredible. But that's because we're always out in the open, and a majority of us are separated. We maintain a good 10 to 12 feet of distance between each other. We have very limited guests that show up. The only outsiders that really come in are our donors. So the traffic's very limited. And so our exposure is very light, as with most other camps. And so it hasn't been a real big issue for the homeless encampments, not like, unfortunately, the shelters, the nursing homes, or anywhere else where uh, there's grouping of people, where they're warehousing people. We're not warehousing when we're out here on the street.
Hey, so that being the case, it sounds like an indictment against the removal and moving of all these encampments. If these encampments essentially helping keep people alive in the middle of the coronavirus, your thoughts?
Yes, it's for the most part it's been an advantage and it's really been helpful. The only zone where we had a COVID outbreak, uh, which was in the High Street area back midsummer. It was about midsummer. I was still working as part of the street outreach teams, and we came across some COVID positive folks in the new RV park. Unfortunately, there was because of that, there was also an outbreak in one of the local markets, which unfortunately the media did not grab onto and alert the folks. And so Cardenas Market, the supermarket right there on High Street, which is central to the entire Hispanic community in Oakland, in that area, that was heavily affected. And unfortunately, the media didn't really talk about it. And so just recently, just before, what was that? October, I believe it was. Um, then the numbers were released for the Hispanic community, and it was a very high number, in the high 50 percentile, but yet with the Hispanic community at only 28% of the population. And so I attribute that to the lack of information getting out to the community. And so I don't know exactly who's to blame, but media is part of it. But also, I look at county and city for not releasing that information, because it was clearly visible. It was all over the internet, on Facebook. We got that information out. And we talked about that in many of the city meetings, just like a city meeting I'm about to go into shortly. So it wasn't a lack of information. It was, I don't know why they didn't release that information to that community to warn them to stay away from that store. And they didn't even, they closed the store down for a weekend to sterilize it. And that was all that was done.
Hmm. What are the next steps in terms of rectifying that situation?
I don't know what city of Oakland is doing right now. Unfortunately, a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the outbreak is through the Black and Hispanic communities right now in Oakland hospitals. So that's very disturbing because uh, the information was there, and it could have been released in a more uh, important fashion rather than, well, let's just take a wait and see attitude. And that seems to be what they did, is take a wait and see attitude.
You said something to me about a person that you were trying to help who at one point I think was a soccer player and was newly unhoused. If I got that story correct. First of all, did I get that story correct? And second, are there more people becoming
Yeah.
what you're seeing, you know?
Yes. Unfortunately, we're seeing COVID affect a lot of people. This person that ended up in my uh, homeless encampment here in Oakland, he found me on the internet because of my Facebook page and also my notoriety on the internet. He came and sought me out, and this is a young man. He's 24 years old. He went into the military. He served his time. He was an aspiring soccer player in the military, and he was actually invited by a professional team here in Los Angeles for his tryout. So um, he spent 3 months here in my camp, and I was counseling him on the dangers of living here out on the streets. And unfortunately, a lot of our young folks, they don't believe it because they're in the age group that they're invincible. And so a lot of the information and a lot of the mentoring that I tried to apply to him, he didn't listen. And it nearly cost him his life last week, literally last week, Monday. And
What
he
happened?
ended up in the hospital for 24 hours to wear off whatever drug he ingested. He ingested what I have figured out as a juiced up crystal meth.
Oh,
And when I say juiced, he had the symptoms of fentanyl inside of that crystal meth when he smoked it. Fortunately, I do have um, Narcan on site in the event that that did happen. But fortunately, we had emergency rescue come out. They kept an eye on him while he was going through his mental crisis. We also had police out here. We told him to really stand back while we try to calm him down and get him in onto the gurney without fighting everybody. Literally, he was fighting everybody because he didn't know what he was doing. That crystal meth, it just makes you a whole different person, and it's devastating. And in this case, it nearly cost him his life. And 24 hours after he was released, he came back to the encampment and came right to me. He was very apologetic. And I said, "You nearly threw your career away," because he is a rising star for LA. And he was invited to the tryouts. The tryouts with LA is this week, and that's why he's down there right now. Uh, so I'm hoping he does well. And um, the only thing advice that I gave him, I said, I hope that you truly learned something uh, through that experience, and that I wasn't the one that was your enemy, even though that sometimes we fought like we were enemies, but I was looking out for his best interests because he has a bright future, and we want him to fulfill that bright future.
so the encampment essentially served as his new family.
Yes, and he says, I'll be back, and he's a really great young man. He's intelligent. He's a great person. He's a very giving person, but again, his youth is kind of getting the better of him. Uh, I can't say that I wasn't that much different than him at that time, uh, but I didn't have something that nearly cost me my life doing something stupid.
How much, and in closing, because I know you have to go out to this meeting at the top of the hour, but you give me the high sign when you actually have to go. But how much, what can the city of Oakland do now that you want to see them do that they're not doing?
What I would really like to see City of Oakland do is open up the community land trust. Uh, there are a lot of residential properties all over Oakland. I've identified nearly 600 acres of open community trust property. Some have buildings on them, but many don't. And those that don't have anything on them, those could be the creation of the new tiny home villages, which I'm proposing. And the tiny home villages are very successful all around the country and create the real, truly affordable housing that Oakland needs. Truly affordable starts at 50,000 for a complete home with electricity, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, door locks, everything. A real home. And that's provided through a land lease by using the community land trust property. And we'd like to see the city of Oakland open that up along with possibly Alameda County to share with that. And that would open up tremendous amount of available space and the creation of truly affordable housing for everybody.
Is that something that you have been able to talk with a council member about or have an ally to push forward? I know that, I mean, I'm asking a question I think I know the answer to, which is yes from a number of different corners, because it's something that should have been done, a long time ago. And I think Moms for Housing pointed to that, as well as Cat Brooks, a number of people. Where are we in terms of the total policy, in terms of advancing that so that it becomes a reality?
Well, right now, Carol Fife, District 3, and we're just beginning talks. I'm also bringing in Nikki Fornutato Bass into the conversation. And we've identified a property that we want to move this project forward and bring the media in, and why the importance of opening community land trust property. And so Carol Fife has been very vocal about this recently, and I really support that. And so we're going to put something together that's really going to draw some attention here in Oakland and regionally and possibly nationally. So it's going to be a big event in the new year, and we're actually working on the real planning, but we're going to announce that very soon.
Will be like before the start of the new year, or just after, or around the time of the inauguration of the candidate of the Carol Fife and the other new council members, or the other new elected officials, or how will that roll out?
Well, we're already starting the talks, but the actual event we're planning for in the early spring.
Oh, okay. Does that also involve Trevor Reed?
Right now, no.
I only asked because there was a headline I saw, but I forget where it came from, about her and Carol Fife working on some sort of initiative regarding the homeless. So when I saw that, and I meant to follow up with Treva about it, I assumed that maybe she was involved in this. Not sure, or maybe it's the same thing. I don't know.
No, not yet.
What is the city getting right? So just so we can full both sides of the coin here.
Well, what the city is getting right. I think they did the right thing in separating out folks, decompressing the shelters, the senior centers congregated warehousing of people, and they did get that right, and so that helped to reduce the spread of COVID. So they got that part right.
Is there? Sure.
Much else? I don't know. I can't think of much, but they've really gotten right.
Yeah, that's a report card. So, in fact, on that note, what kind of grade would you give the city and the county, for that matter, County of Alameda?
As you know, I stepped down from one of my board seats because of my uh, uh, opposition to what was actually going on with the healthcare system board that I sat on. And so that changed a lot of things for me. But I lost my train of thought. Repeat the question again. I'm sorry.
What grade would you give the city of Oakland regarding how it's handling homeless? Yeah, and I saw
how they're
yeah
how they're handling the homeless and the situation, the COVID, everything. I would give them a D at best. I won't give them an F because they did better than an F, but not by much. But they did get people housed, not very well. There was a lot of rooms that went empty for the whole period, and that's a whole different subject and another reason why I stepped down from my board seat, because I didn't agree with that.
There's a man named Jeffrey Derone out of Beaumont, Texas, who writes, "Just sending out lots of love and respect to Derrick Sue. You're a very inspirational person, and best of luck on that mayoral run." I second that. There you go.
I plan on doing very well in the election. So I got started early because this way folks actually get to know me rather than just my short political career or advertising that would come up in 2022. And that would be a huge disadvantage for me since nobody knows me. Whereas I get started early like I did, people get to know me, get to know my politics, my train of thinking, and my focus for the city of Oakland. And that I'm not having any hidden agenda. You'll know what my agenda is and what I plan on doing.
Hey, on that note, has anyone talked about the homeless population and voting? Because it occurs to me that I don't know if those addresses are recognized from a voting perspective. Are they or are they not? How does that go? How does that work?
In the city of Oakland, it is recognized. How we got a lot of the homeless folks registered for voting was using Roots health center here in East Oakland, along with several other agencies to get people registered for voting. That gave them an address and also an area where they can pick up their voting ballots. So these were critical. One of the projects that I was working on to make that simpler was called Den Mail, but unfortunately COVID hit and we weren't able to launch that particular project. And that would have been making things much easier, more viable for the homeless folks to actually register and have an address that they could use for any kind of delivery. But again, like the COVID hit and killed everything off. But once we get past this crisis, then we'll get back on to Den Mail because it is a viable and much needed service.
Hey, Derrick, I know that you need some time to prepare for your meeting, so I want to thank you very much and thank you for being a great member of our corporation and friend and everything else. And so, as Honorable would say, I'll be back. And Merry Christmas. Hey, stick around in the back.
All right, I'll be back. Thanks, Eddie.
Hey, Derrick, stick
Merry
around.
Christmas.
You guys stick around in the background. Folks, we'll be back with more.